Hello, everybody. Wow, that's really loud. Great to see so many of you here at the end of the day. I hope you're going to stay with us for the whole session because today we're talking about content and influencers, two really, really big, important topics that you guys definitely need to be thinking about whatever you're doing. Even if you're B2B, this is an important topic. So first of all, just a quick show of hands to get a feeling of who's in the room. How many destinations do we have in the room? If you're a destination, put your hand up. Great. A few, yeah, 4 or 5. And how many hoteliers do we have in the room? And how many for airlines, technology, B2B, bloggers? Okay, I'm going to stop there. Okay, so we've got actually a pretty even mix of the travel industry here. And how many of you feel that your content strategies are just delivering aces for you, that's really, really doing well? Put your hands up if you think your content strategy is amazing. Nobody. One person. Great. A couple of you. So that's why you're here, I guess. Well, I guess I was just talking with somebody before, and we were talking about different approaches to content. And there is no wrong or right way to approach content. But one thing is for sure, is that it's a really, really important thing that you need to build into your business and your daily workflow, whether you're a business or a destination. So that's what we're talking about today. And just a quick introduction to myself. I'm Nick, and I'm the founder of the Digital Tourism Think Tank. And I work with destinations all around Europe, the Middle East, and Africa to help them get on top of their game when it comes to digital. I will be joined a little bit later by Dominique from Whaler, who is our partner. And they've been doing some amazing things with us. Dominique, stand up just a second. There you go. She'll be joining, and she'll be giving some insights, particularly on the creator and influencer scene. But first I'll set the scene by talking about how we see the picture when it comes to tourism businesses. Before I do that, I'm going to kick off with a short introductory video, which gives you a little idea of the sort of things that we've been working on closely with Whaler. This is a sneak preview of our upcoming events happening in Jersey in the Channel Islands. All right, so that is Campus. That's happening in September. And we're literally taking over a whole island for 3 days and getting people to go nuts about content and product development and creating those amazing experiences. And we've been working really closely with Whaler to pull together those amazing creators that you saw in the video there, who are just so inspiring. So we'll get back to that in a minute. I think Dom is going to talk about some of those creators and just how talented they are. But what we're seeing in the travel industry is obviously the huge importance of mobile and social content. And we're seeing a lot of brands now getting to grips with this and starting to put in place a completely new workflow within their teams. And we're seeing a lot of people now saying, oh, actually, we need to build a content team. We need a creative team that can be the storytellers day by day. And here's an example of Copenhagen, the city of Copenhagen, that actually is one of the most successful cases of a destination doing this. And how they started is they started working with all their existing content. The video you saw just there is actually video that's using cuts of their existing content, but they're re-editing it for social. So a lot of you might be consuming this and flicking through this thinking, oh wow, how much money and time do they have to create all of this content? But the first thing to say is you already probably have great content. So think about the content you have today and how you can remix and reuse a lot of that. Also being really creative with content, which is what Dom is going to talk about, and thinking about how to create really unique angles on everyday experiences that you have within your business or within your destination. For example, in a golf course, how you can make that content really compelling and really engaging, because actually it's a completely creative and different take on it. Also, we're seeing just how important it is to maybe look impromptu, look like you just are there in the moment when it happens, but actually to plan for that well in advance. The best content teams know what's happening, know what's coming. They're planning far ahead. They're working with social in the same way that maybe you've traditionally worked with your content newsletters, where they're thinking about what those stories are and how they can be relevant and engage right in the middle of those stories. So it's about being timely in the middle of things that are happening around the destination. And here's a business example. I took this one because I love seeing small businesses and small businesses which really perform. And this is a business in the island of Jersey which really inspired me because it's one guy and he's got a team of volunteers which help him during the summer season. But it's one guy who has just understood how important it is for him to have a set of GoPros, to film everything, to photograph everything, to have a drone flying over his boat when he takes people out on the rib, and to create content. And then he works with partners who then stitch that together and create amazing hero content. And he's got what is a really professional brand image for what is a one-man band as a company. And as you can see, the content on his site is really, really engaging. It really pulls out the best bits and allows people to actually understand what that experience is like to experience it. So we always talk about immersive content, 360 video, all of this, but it's actually seeing where it fits within your business strategy, how you convert customers at the right point. And sometimes it's the simplest things. This is the same guy who has written a series of blog articles. He hasn't written a lot, but he's written really well-positioned articles. So it's about telling a story whenever there is a story to be told. And he played on the Carlsberg advert where they say, if Carlsberg did this, it would be the best in the world. And he wrote a blog article about how they brought a new boat to add to their fleet. And this sort of content is just really interesting, and it surfaces really well. We've almost moved away from looking at SEO because of the rise of social, but this is the sort of content that really, really performs well, and it creates a level of depth to the business. Now, here's another brand which I really love, because this is a couple which have decided to start a coffee shop. And they have decided to do this, first of all, by building the brand through social, at the same time that they're building the business. And what's really interesting here is, well, first of all, the honesty. You probably can't read that, but they're basically talking about how challenging and difficult it is to start up a business. And people love that. People feel really connected to them. There's a human behind this business, and they're really sharing their passions. But what I really love about this is how they're so creative in showing their ideas around the business. And they've already got more than 5,000 followers. And yet the shop that they are talking about doesn't exist yet. They're just showing the paint or the floor or the coffee beans. And every day they're storytellers. And of course, once they do launch, which I think is in the next few weeks now, once they do launch, they will be really, really engaging their customers constantly, because they realize that even if the business doesn't exist yet, they have to be storytellers within their business. And this is just an example of an Instagram story which I captured, where they're creating pop-up shops to test different coffees, different concepts, and they're really, really successful. And this is what you need to be today to be relevant and to find the right customers that are going to drive customers into your business. Also here, another example of using Instagram stories, but to be really creative. Oh, if you could just, yep, great, thanks. So this is an example of two different companies that have actually collaborated and partnered together. So Eurostar, which is a train company connecting London and Paris, teamed up with the Hoxton hotels to actually create a joint experience and to create similar content that collaborated with each other. They synchronized and worked together, and they were really, really impactful at telling the same story together. And this only happens through planning, through thinking ahead, and not being ad hoc and just whenever the moment feels like it when it comes to social. So another really great example there. Now, moving on to destinations, because that's what I'm involved with most of my time. Unfortunately, I didn't get the full screen grab which I wanted for you. But this is just an example of where destinations are moving, because destinations are playing right at the top of the funnel, where they're creating brand awareness and early stage brand interest. And this is an example of a fully immersive site, which we see more and more of. So you can interact with that, you can discover the experiences, and you can meet the people within that site. So it's a fully audio-visual experience. And that's not 360, but it has the same sensory effect. And finally, one of my favorite examples is a destination called Maine in the US. Now, Maine have really understood that their role as a destination is to support their businesses, to find great stories within that destination, and to lift them, and to be the storytellers for that. So rather than thinking of a brand in a very traditional sense, they've thought of themselves as storytellers. How can they be relevant and really lift those amazing stories? And so actually their website better reflects a really nice blog than anything else. And they're just 100% focused on aligning the businesses with the brand that they want to strengthen and that they want to communicate, and being the storytellers every day behind that. So just a few last words before I hand over to Dom. What we see when it comes to content, if you're a business or a destination, get the right framework. Make sure you have structure to your content plans. Don't just go out there on a whim. Make sure you use data as well, by the way. Collaborate, work with partners. Don't do it alone, especially when there are so many channels to cover. You really need to work with others. Identify ambassadors within your business who can be the champions and the storytellers for you. Look at the opportunity of going live. Every time we go live, the engagement is through the roof. But going live is something you should think about. Where are the opportunities to actually go live? How can we make that live content really engaging? Have an always-on strategy so you know exactly what's coming in your calendar, and make sure you're true to a clear tone of voice. Your brand is the consistency, it's not the logo. When it comes to targeting, very obvious things we've been talking about for years. Any channel, any device, anywhere. That is where your customers are. And it's important that you have a clear strategy that's customer-specific, channel-specific, and device-specific, which focuses on building awareness, engagement, and conversion. There are 3 different stages of that visitor journey. When it comes to experiencing and sharing, make sure that everything within your business is shareable. Think of a plate on your menu as an Instagram photo, and make sure it's going to perform, convert, and engage people. Think about how you can make sure if you explore new tech that you provide some kind of function behind that. And think about how loyalty can really help create a tailored engagement as well. And lastly, personalization is really, really important when it comes to your website. Personalize your content. Make sure you understand who your consumers are and serve up the right content. Use automation to do that. Automation is very, very powerful, and any business can get started with it, even with a tool like MailChimp. Make sure it's authentic, and lastly, make sure it's absolutely fulfilling. So that's a few introductory words from me. That's what we're seeing at the moment. And now I'm going to hand the stage to Dominique, who's going to introduce her panel, and she's going to tell us about what they see happening when they work with creators and influencers. And she's got some really nice examples, which I'm looking forward to seeing myself. So please welcome Dominique to the stage.
So shortly, I'll be doing an influencer panel where I'll be talking through with Sai and Zainab about, what it actually means to work with content creators with influence, what a good collaboration looks like, and how to get the most out of both them and their content creation skills, but also how to leverage that. But first, I'm going to take you through a little presentation which talks about influencers working with content creators and actually how to make them an integral part of your kind of marketing campaign, and also how to get the most out of them by doing that. So, to introduce myself, I'm Dominique. I'm an associate director at Wayler. We are an influencer marketing platform that started in London. We now have offices in 3 different markets and are expanding rapidly. I've been there since the beginning. It's a super exciting space to be in, and I've seen it develop and change over the last 2.5 years. So I think before I begin, we're going to talk a little bit about leveraging, obviously, the power of content creation and influencers, but we're also going to talk about what content creators are not. So obviously, typically when people think of content creators and influencers, they think of people that take selfies, or they think of people that just, pick up a camera and take a quick snap. The Kim Kardashians of this world, the celebrities. Obviously, for brands like yourselves, that doesn't add any value. And this is currently what the influencer universe looks like. At Whalar, we very much divide them into three kind of categories. So you have our celebrities, lovely picture of Kim Kardashian's bottom, and the people that actually, they have a social following because of who they are and their celebrity personality. We then have our social stars, so the Zoellas of this world, the YouTubers, who have built up a following because of their personality and who they are and what they represent. We then have the creators with influence. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. These people are incredibly talented creators, videographers, photographers who have built up a digital audience through the incredible content that they create and share on their own distribution channels. That's what we're interested in at Whalar. We're interested in connecting brands to these people to create content that is on brand and on brief, that is highly creative and actually adds a whole new dimension to your marketing strategy. Just to give you some examples of some of the creators we work with. This is Eau Couture. She's from Europe. She travels all over the world creating amazing travel content. She has a very aspirational and dreamy feed. Someone like this Minty Moment. This guy is called Mint. He's actually based in LA. He's a photographer with a very distinct style. His aesthetic is very clean, very minimal, and very, very premium. Now, this is Q Mike, who we work with a lot in London. He's a highly talented, creative individual. He creates an array of different formats, from cinemagraphs to videos to obviously incredible still imagery. He's an expert Photoshopper, and he works with loads and loads of brands in the fashion, travel, and lifestyle sectors. Oh, and just to go back, my last example is Paper Boyo. He travels the world transforming objects, buildings, landscapes in a really engaging, creative way. And he regularly works with brands to push those creative boundaries and actually have people perceive their brand in a whole new way. So let's take a little look at the market and how it stands currently. It's really interesting when you actually look at consumer and kind of user-generated content versus branded content. And these are some statistics we've pulled for user-generated content versus branded content on both organic and paid-for channels. Consumers are 3 times more likely to say that content created by a consumer is more authentic compared to a content created by a brand. As you all know, there is such a demand now for brands, destinations such as yourselves to be creating content on a regular basis. Touch points that you have to be engaging with your consumer are so much more, and you have to be, there's such a vast array of channels now that you have to be communicating on. And we're going to look at how we can work with content creators to provide a scalable and cost-efficient solution to do this. So let's talk a little bit about these creators' audiences. It's really important to remember that they themselves are consumers. They are a voice of authority in whatever area of content, stylistically, what topics they talk about. For example, the woman in the picture is a mummy and lifestyle blogger. So she talks a lot about her children and what kind of activities, what products they would enjoy using. Her followers look to her. Her followers are mainly obviously made up of women of a similar demographic who look to her and her incredible content for recommendations of what to be buying, what to be purchasing, where to be visiting. It's really important to understand that these creators are consumers themselves, and the content they're creating is registering and resonating with a very similar target audience to them. So when we talk about matchmaking brands to content creators with influence, do they look like your target consumer? It's really important to think about that. Are these creators that you're working with, do they look like someone, an audience member that you would want to appeal to? So I'm going to show you now just an array of content, and I just want you to think about whether or not you think this content would have been created by a content creator with influence or a brand. So all of this content was actually created by our content creators. We gave them a very careful brief. We only selected creators that had a very similar aesthetic, tone of voice, vibe to the brands we were working with. And because of that careful matchmaking and briefing process, we're able to create our brands a bank of imagery that they can actually then take and use on their own channels as if it were created by themselves. However, would they have been able to create such incredible, engaging, beautiful content themselves in-house? Absolutely not. So it's about leveraging these influencers and thinking of them as a scalable content creation solution. How can you work with them and identify the correct ones to be adding a whole new dimension to your brand? So again, talking a little bit more about the actual creation themselves. When we talk about kind of actually creation, obviously brands a lot of the time are trying to do this in-house. These people are experts at the innovative new tools used on social media. They are the first ones to try out Instagram stories. They are the first ones to try out Facebook Live. They are the first ones to be testing new Cinemagraph apps or new stop motion animation apps. They're creating content. They are experts at creating content that is engaging and relevant for their audience. And by working with them, you're allowing your brand to actually tap into not only their sphere of influence, but also their incredible content creation skills as well. So just an example of some of the types of content they can create. As I mentioned, these people, by actually creating this kind of content increasingly on a day-to-day basis and for brands, they are actually becoming brand ambassadors. They themselves are publishing on them on their own channels, and they are digital publishers. I think it's really important to remember that when people are on social media, when they're on Facebook or they're on Instagram, sorry, it keeps happening, they are very much in browsing mode. They are thinking about, they're looking for inspiration. Where's the next destination to go to? What holiday should I be going on next year? People are very much actually becoming increasingly passive on social media. So it's really important to think of these influencers as sitting at the top of your sales funnel. They are driving brand awareness. They are driving relevance through not only their content creation, but also their super engaged audience as well. And a little kind of summary of how we work at Wayler. We're essentially creating bespoke content for the brand. We do not kind of leverage content that they've previously created. Each creator is creating bespoke content for that brand and for that brief. We have previously turned around briefs in 4 weeks. If you went to a creative agency and said you wanted content in 4 weeks, they would probably laugh you out the door. But we have turned around global campaigns in 4 weeks by actually utilizing these creators and their skills. Obviously, because of that, it's incredibly scalable. We run global campaigns all over the world. You can work with 10 creators, you can work with 10,000. It's all about really thinking about what your campaign and what your objectives are for working with these people. Where are you going to be using that content? Do you want to be using that content in your paid advertising or on your social media channels or on billboards? We really encourage, clients and brands that we're working with to actually take that content and use it elsewhere. Make it work hard. You've got this incredible, engaging content. Where else can you use it? It's imaginative, it's creative, it's content that actually takes your brand into a different sphere. They would find in-house very difficult to create the kind of scale and the scale of creativity that our creators can produce. Obviously, it's incredibly diverse. We work in all different markets, meaning that your content is culturally relevant within those markets. You'd have to send a production team to 10 different markets to get 10 different lots of content. Why not identify and work with creators in those markets? They're still promoting your brand. It's still on brand, but it's diverse, it's culturally relevant, and it resonates on a global and local level. It's, as I mentioned before, it's cost efficient. Working with a creative agency or a production agency, we've all been there. It's rather expensive. However, working with influencers and creators is an incredibly cost-efficient way to create content at scale. So let's look at some examples of how these brands have leveraged these creators. We actually work regularly on an always-on capacity with Sweaty Betty. We produce content for them every single month. This was actually for the launch of their power leggings. So they were doing a brand new product launch. Don't know why that keeps happening. They were doing a brand new product launch all over the world to promote their power leggings. They worked with 15 creators in over 10 markets to create and publish content. Now, if they'd sent a production team to each of these locations, it would have cost them hundreds of thousands. For a relatively small amount, they can create content all over the world that resonates with their target audience, but also is locally relevant to that market. This is a campaign we've run recently for Dior. This was actually to support their campaign, What Would You Do for Love? It was all about creating a Dior love chain. They had hero pieces of content where they had super famous celebrities in their TV advertising and their social advertising. And we created all of the hub content that sat within that. Off the back of this, we actually generated over 500,000 pieces of UGC because of the conversation our creators were starting. They were creating and posting content all around the theme of what would you do for love. And Dior were so thrilled with this content, they actually created a pop-up gallery in Paris to showcase this. This is some of the content that was produced. Again, this is a campaign we've actually recently run for Diageo, where it was all about brand repositioning. They wanted consumers and millennials and younger consumers to be thinking about drinking Scotch and Scotch cocktails. So they thought, okay, how can we actually make this relevant to a younger consumer? Thinking about where their target consumers live, where do they engage? They carry around their advertising devices with them in their pocket. They live on Instagram. So let's create some socially led, digitally native content that will live on those channels and reposition Scotch and Scotch cocktails as the drink to be drinking last summer. Through this, they were able to drive a massive cultural conversation about drinking Scotch and what that means. And finally, one of my favorites was our Dubai tourism campaign that we actually run last year. We essentially sent out creators from all different markets, and they were some of the biggest creators in the world. They all had a huge following. We sent them out from all different markets, all over Europe, all over America, and we sent them to Dubai to experience Dubai. Now, we focused on verticals. So we had family bloggers, we had content creators who only focus on adventures and thrill seeking, we had couples, we had fashion bloggers. We sent them all out to Dubai to experience that topic of Dubai. And through that, we were able to position Dubai as appealing to so many different people. We opened that audience up. They wanted a really wide demographic, and they wanted Dubai to be the place to visit in 2017. This campaign generated over 400 million in reach. So this is, in terms of influencer content, everyone thinks, okay, so you've built me an amazing bank of on-brand imagery. I've got a massive reach out of it, but how do I actually justify the ROI? How do I get a great ROI from working with influencers? We have turned it into a science. We're not interested in, creating content and then just letting it live in the social world. We want to make that content work hard. We regularly do tests with Facebook and Instagram, and we test branded content and stock imagery against influencer-generated content. Influencer content always outperforms branded and stock imagery by at least 4 times, and that's 4 times at an absolute minimum. When working with us, you get 2 years full usage rights to that content. So it's really important to think, where can you use that? Where can you use that content? We've had clients take it and put it on the side of buses. We've had some clients blow it up and put it on billboards, in point of sales in their store. We've also had clients use it in all of their digital advertising, banner ads, Instagram adverts. It's really, really important, and that's where you get the value. Make that content work for you. Make it work hard. So this is an example of Q Mike, who also, I think where are we going? Oh, I'm going forward. Am I going? Okay, here we go. So another way of tracking ROI. Obviously, there's the content. You've got the reach. You've got the fact that you can take it and make it work hard for you. There's also now, because of the new features of Instagram and the new features of Facebook, There's ways of putting trackable links in. There's the swipe up feature. If you're looking to drive people to your website or drive people to your booking site, or if you're a hotel, actually drive people to your own Instagram account. There's ways now that we can actually track how many people looked at that piece of content and not only engaged with it, but actually went on to visit the site as a result or visit the Instagram page as a result. Again, it's about getting an ROI out of influencer marketing. So finally, I think I'll leave you with a few questions. As I've discussed and sort of tried to showcase, we're trying to make influencer marketing a science. You know, it's incredible to tap into these community of creators, highly creative, incredibly talented individuals who are using Instagram as a technology-enabled opportunity. How do you tap into that? How do you make that work for your brand? And it's really important when working with influencers to think of them as digital publishers. They have a tone of voice, they have a brand, they have a platform, they have an aesthetic. How can you work with them and to get the most out of that and make that work for you? How can you tap into that? And I think it's really important to set those campaign objectives at the beginning and think about, is it content, is it reach, is it cultural awareness or brand awareness, and really, really make that work for you. Okay. Alrighty, thanks so much. I'm gonna move on to our influence panel now. Did you wanna? Okay, cool. Thank you. Put that down. Okay, thanks so much for joining me, guys. Do you wanna make sure your mics are on? Awesome. So it'd be great if you guys could introduce yourself and then we'll crack on. Cool. Is it on? Yeah, give it a roll.
Hello.
Yeah, it's on.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zainab and hello. My social media page is called Fashion Pirate, and it's kind of a mix of fashion, travel, luxury, lifestyle, like a mood board, pretty much.
So how did you get started? How did you become a content creator? The famous question.
Yeah, the famous question. Actually, I worked in a corporate brand, and I used to travel a lot with the brand that I used to work with in the Middle East and Africa region.
Great.
And I had some spare time. So every time I visited a new city or new country, I used to take a lot of photos.
Amazing.
And I had a blog, an online blog. And then when Instagram opened up in the beginning, kind of just slowly started growing. And yeah, that's how it evolved.
Cool. Awesome. And same question to you, Sai?
Hi, Dom.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Well, I am a digital marketer by trade. And in fact, I'm always here in Arabian Travel Market. 2 years ago, the last time I was here, I've worked closely with big brands like Jumeirah Group, Nakheel, as a digital marketer. And then I have my blog on the side. And 2 years ago, I got so busy. I had a lot of projects that, I had to focus on it. So that's how I got started.
Great. I think, the purpose of this panel is we want to talk about actually and hear from these guys firsthand on how to work with brands, what value they're adding, and what a good collaboration looks like. So tell me, in terms of working recently with brands, what's an example of a good collaboration? And can you tell us why it worked so well and why it was so seamless?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you definitely need to have an understanding of what they want,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to know your social media page as well. So you're able to kind of meet in the middle and create something that makes sense rather than suddenly becoming something that doesn't relate to you.
Totally. And so do they come with you with they come to you with a good brief, and you kind of essentially will input into that brief and have a discussion around how you think you can make that work the best for them?
Absolutely. Definitely sharing ideas is key. I mean, there's lots of different methods. I mean, sometimes you receive quite a strict brief, which is you can't really bend.
Sure.
But that's the challenge that we have, and we're the ones that need to kind of fit that in our daily lifestyle, in our page, so it kind of, it's cohesive.
Absolutely, and still make it feel authentic.
Exactly.
Cool. Same question to you, Sai?
Thank you. Well, before I answer the question, I think I have to just tell people that I'm also a blogger. So I am at the Sand Gypsy on Instagram. So to answer your question, what is a good collaboration? I've worked with a handful of brands in the past. And based on my experience, a good collaboration is first if the brand is aligned with my personal branding. if it's a brand that I respect, and some brands that I've been using even before the collaboration. And if it's a brand that I've never used before, if I like their values. So, for example, I work with Avida, the hair brand. So they're very strict with the products that they use. They're against animal cruelty. They don't use plastic. They recycle everything, and I really respect that. And I've never used the brand before. So even after the collaboration, I started buying the product just because I love the product and the brand. Second is, of course, if it pays well. That's a good collaboration, let's be honest. And third is if you have creative freedom. Because some brands would come to you and tell you, okay, for example, I work with a watch brand, and my branding is very, wanderlust. I would go to the beach, I would go to the desert. And so they gave me this watch, and they said, go take photos of the watch. So I went to the desert, lying down in the desert. I went to the beach and gave them amazing content. And they came to me and said, oh, we can't use it because we need it in white background. So I'm like, yeah. So again, collaboration means you have to meet halfway. So a good collaboration is when the brief is also clear. So for me, that is my...
Absolutely. And I guess when a brand has really thought about actually what they're looking to get out of the collaboration, when they've got a brief and they've got campaign objectives, but actually it's a brief that has enough parameters to give you some guidelines, but ultimately the creative freedom to work within that. Yeah, cool. So what does the process of working with a brand look like? I'll just carry on with that. How do you come up with your creative ideas? And then we'll come to you.
Well, you have your own style, yeah? And if you're given a brand, you have a certain interpretation of the product. So then there's no... Creativity means it's limitless. So there's no one way to interpret something. It always depends on the brand, where you are. So I think that's when creativity comes in. Like, there's no specific guideline for me personally, so I can't...
Same for you. How do you come up with your ideas? How do you think about how you're going to fit that into your feed and how you're going to create that content?
I think it's a mix of a lot of things. I mean, a lot of emotion involved, a lot of mood, depends on the day of the week. But in general, I mean, if it's in terms of working with a brand specifically, you definitely need to kind of create a mood board and a style. I mean, some brands do provide it, and then you discuss the ideas together. I mean, the idea is to create something creative and unusual and fun and kind of relative to your followers. I mean, if it's very standard on a white background, we know it's not going to work. It's not going to engage.
Absolutely.
I mean, some brands are very specific and that's what they want, and, we have to deliver it. But lately, I mean, we've been doing this for a few years now, and back then it was very, very strict.
Sure.
And now it's only now recently that, brands are kind of trusting in us a little bit more, kind of understanding what we've been doing, and letting us kind of drive a little bit, which makes it more fun.
Absolutely. And I think a really good question is how, and something that I certainly am always interested in, is when do you say no to brands? When do you actually say, no, that's not going to work? Is it the brief? Is it the type of brand?
Again, it's a mix. It depends. If you don't believe in the product, don't work with it. Simple as that. Blunt. Some brands, as simple as that, really. I mean, I've rejected a lot, because I'm like, it just doesn't work. And if you're doing one skincare product and then another skincare product comes along, and, it just doesn't make sense, really. Like, people see right through it,
Absolutely. So you have to keep that authenticity and that organicness.
Yeah, well, this is when niche comes in. So if you only talk about fashion and travel and you start posting about cat food, it's kind of questionable,
Sure.
But then also you can play around it if you're creative. There is a way to always, it depends on how you...
I mean, I evolved. I started with fashion, then I got into lifestyle, and then I was traveling so much, so it was travel. But there needs to be it's a story, it's like a diary, an online diary.
And as publishers, you have your own niche, you have your own tone of voice, and if anything strays too far from that, you kind of wouldn't necessarily go with it.
But if I suddenly post a fridge in the middle of my fashion shots, I think that's going to be unusual and obvious. Okay, that's a paid job, and people are not going to relate to that.
Absolutely. And in terms of, I think, it's always a big question around when you have to obviously disclose that it's a hashtag ad or a hashtag spawn. How does that impact your engagement at all? Or does it not impact it? How do you find your audience reacts to that?
I think if it's creative, people love it, and followers love to see that you're doing something, and they trust in you. So as much as it's an ad, you still believe in it, and they're believing that you believe in it. So there is still that positive engagement.
Sure.
For sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, hashtag for me works differently. In the region, in the US and the UK, if you use hashtag, if it's an ad, you put ad. So here, we don't have that yet. We'll get there.
Yep.
But when I use hashtag, I get more engagement. But the engagement I get doesn't mean they're authentic. Maybe sometimes it's a bot or, it happens. So stunning, it's very general. So I get more engagement, definitely. But I am not fixated with hashtags. However, if I am collaborating with brands, they use specific hashtag just so they can put the photos in one pool of images, pool of images. So it's say ATM X Dominic or Waller. You click the hashtag, you are brought to a specific place where everyone who used the hashtag are there. So that for me is the practical side of using hashtags.
And I guess if the content looks like something you'd post about and you've actually taken that product and you've showcased it in a really creative way and done it in a really different dimension, we've actually found, sometimes when we've done tests of branded content, it actually performs better. Yeah, have you found this sort of similar thing as well when you're able to take that product and use it in a completely new way or position it in a different way?
In terms of the product, you mean?
Yeah, in terms of the content and how well it performs on your channel.
In terms of the Dubai market, just something I wanted to mention. We do a lot of events, for example.
Sure.
So let's say she works with Aveda. The next day there's an event with Pantene, for example. But I think it's how you speak to your followers and explain things sometimes. Like sometimes you need to use words. You need to make an understanding. I mean, at the end of the day, we have an Instagram page, and yes, we discover new things. So it's kind of like discovering with people, okay, I don't know this product, but I'm going to try it out. Okay, I'm not so sure about this, but if you have oily skin, then maybe you could use this. So it's kind of like, we're like kind of guinea pigs in essence. That makes sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And in terms of kind of travel content that you've produced previously, what kind of trends do you see on Instagram now with travel bloggers and travel content and all those kinds of things?
Dreamy.
So very aspirational.
Yeah, 100%. The second I'm traveling, my content changes into this like kind of dreamy like place that you just want to disappear to. They do really, really well on Instagram, and a lot of larger accounts repost those kind of shots. I mean, because it's not actually that personal. Anyone can relate to it. When someone's having a bad day, that's where they want to be. When they want to switch off, that's where they want to be. Like it's something that just relates to the majority of people.
I was going to say something is very accessible. Everyone can relate to that feeling of traveling and wanderlust. I think there's an especially big push towards that, especially in the millennial younger market. It's all about travels and experiences now. So, Sai, what would you say the biggest kind of misconceptions are when it comes to working with creators?
This is like my favorite question when we had the conversation during lunch. So before I started blogging, I would see a girl with her boyfriend in her bikini on the beach, posing, and someone's taking her photo. And I always think, oh my God, she's so vain. And now I do the same, not in bikini, but with my tripod. And I have, say, 5 people taking my photos, thinking that I am so vain. But no, it's paid. However, what I want people to understand is what we do is a proper job. So first, we invest in our camera. Our camera is not cheap. We say invest at least 15,000 dirhams to buy a really expensive gear, because people say it's the person taking it. No, darling, it's the gear, the camera that you're using. You can be the most creative person, but if you don't have the instrument to produce good content, it's really hard to achieve that. Second, we do everything. We don't just take photos. We don't just get the project and take photos. We go out there, we meet PR, we go to events, we invest our time so we can build connections. So when there's projects or campaigns, these people will work with us. So that's second. Third, marketing, accounting. You answer emails every day. You reach out to brands. We reach out to people like you. We sign up. So there's so much admin that's going on. We are a proper business. The only difference is we are our own product, which puts more pressure because when you go out, you have to represent the brand that you have online. So that is, I think, what I want people to understand about what we do.
Very well said. No, I completely agree. It's very time consuming. I left my corporate job because I didn't have enough time for this. And I still don't have enough time for this. I've never wanted more days in a week ever. Like, I mean, I want to do so many things, and there's so many branches you can go into, and you get inspired by others, and you know, it's a very active lifestyle. And if you want to succeed, you need to kind of compromise on a lot of things, even your personal life, and you need to be switched on 24/7.
And I think you guys are obviously, you know, the cultural kind of pioneers, so you need to know what's not only what's going on around you and in the different spheres, but also I think there's a kind of a need to showcase that also you are your own models, you are your own creative directors, content producers, marketeers, and all those kinds of things as well. Okay, great. Well, thanks so much. That was great. Next,
Thank you.
Open it up into Q&A.
Absolutely.
It's not on. You might need to turn it.
I think, yeah, there we go. Well, thanks very much for moderating that panel. For me, that was really interesting because we usually hear from travel bloggers, and I think it's really interesting to hear a different perspective because, you know, we talk more and more in tourism about the importance of niche marketing, about the importance of targeting different interest groups that match our audiences, and that's what you started off talking about. And you said yourselves, the engagement is really high if you post anything that's maybe travel related. So I have a question before we go to the audience for both of you, which is, have you ever done any more travel related blogging, travel clients that really see that opportunity?
So my branding is fashion and travel. So I would go to the Maldives and wear something really nice, just because who doesn't love traveling and who doesn't love shopping, right? So I recently went for a press trip in Tourism Thailand, Morocco. So I do a lot of traveling as well, and I think it just makes it more interesting. Yeah.
Great.
Pretty much the same. I do travel a lot. I mean, I'm very passionate before the whole social media existed anyway. So I was lucky to have a lot of opportunities working with hotel chains and doing a couple of stops in different countries and hotels and airlines as well. I mean, we're kind of lucky in Dubai because it's kind of the hub of everything. And we are very lucky to have the access to all of those kind of opportunities. So yes, we do a lot. And I think that helps us distinguish ourselves from a lot of others because there is a huge amount of bloggers and social media influencers and celebrities in the Middle East in general, not only in Dubai, but the whole region. So yeah, I mean, you need to make your mark. You need to make yourself stand out. You need to have a personality. So that is a really good thing to do.
And of course, your followers also love to travel,
love it.
I'm sure.
They love to discover new things.
So it's a prime audience. So let's open it up to the floor. Who has some questions for our panel? Okay, straight away.
Your photos are absolutely professional. They're photos that you could see in any kind of high fashion magazine. When you started out, was it just you and a selfie stick? Do you still just use a tripod? Those same type of pictures, if produced for a magazine, would have a crew of like 5 to 20 people. Like, what do you use as your crew? Is it just a friend that's, you know, holding the camera for you, or do you employ a whole group?
So your question is the kind of content we used to produce in the beginning is still quite similar? Is that your question?
I haven't seen your page yet, but I quickly looked at Fashion Pirate, and it looks like a glossy fashion magazine. And I know that those types of pictures are a lot of work. Lighting, makeup, someone to hold the camera. When you started out, was it just you and a selfie stick or a tripod? And where you're now at like 200 and something thousand followers, you obviously and rightfully are making money. Do you employ a team now?
I don't have a team as of yet. I'm really struggling. Anyone want to join a team? I'm a mix. So sometimes my husband, my mom, who knows my style and knows my angles very, very well now, through trial and error, takes photos. And sometimes I spend a lot more time to create content and work on more professional videos. And so it really depends. It's really a mix of things, because sometimes something that's quite basic works really well as well. I didn't start out with selfies because I hate selfies. I started out with more like outfit shots without my head in it. So yeah, I mean,
Okay, so it's not there, but it's the Sand Gypsy, but I will steal your stuff. It's the Sand Gypsy. That's my Instagram and my website. When I started, just like anyone, you start somewhere. So you do it on your own. But I didn't start with a selfie. Fortunately for me, no selfie. I had a Canon camera, 1200, I think. It's very basic. Yeah, and I have a few clothes and took a photo, posted it, and then after 2 years, took off. And now my photos is more editorial than it used to. It's a bit more professional. In fact, brands would buy my photos to use in their stores and magazines. So recently, Sally Hansen bought 2 of my photos to be used in the store. So that is the kind of content that I produce now after 4 years of blogging. Yeah, you get better. You do it every day, just like anything. You get better. You have better equipment. You learn the better filter. You just get better. Just like anything, we start somewhere. So yeah, but we started with basic. So your phone is perfect when you're just starting. Then yeah.
you can do a lot with the phone though, by the way. There's a lot of apps out there, like Photoshop and Lightroom and I don't know what. But it takes time.
So you've really gone through that process of sort of professionalizing yourselves, learning through your kind of whole development. But I think that's a great question, because you've sort of answered the question that maybe a lot of businesses and brands are thinking, especially the smaller ones, thinking, okay, we can never do this stuff. And actually, I think these guys show that you can with limited resources. But you need to, I guess, grasp it, be passionate, really kind of get the creative angle that you want to build. So I guess with one creative person in your team, you can do a hell of a lot. And that's pretty impressive. So this guy thinks you've got a whole content team behind you. So definitely hats off to you there. So other questions from the audience? Any other questions?
Come on.
Did I hear? No? So Dom, what's your experience of working with travel brands and what their expectations are and how to meet their expectations?
Absolutely. I think it's about, creating content. I think a lot of it's to do with, what markets they're looking to actually target. We've had a lot of basically travel collaborations where they've been looking to target audience from a very specific market. So that if they're an American brand looking to target a European audience, it's about focusing and finding creators in those markets and actually sending them out to the destination in America. We've done some kind of regional work with them and actually having them, create and post content that is culturally relevant in the sense that it's showcasing the best of the destination, but actually it's also relevant to those people at home. We often, when we're looking at audience demographics, people that are from that area have their highest following in their local area where they're from. So it's about really kind of honing in and targeting that and ultimately creating content that is going to appeal to that target audience.
Great. So any other questions from our audience? Well, I think the takeaway for me is that it's really about matching the right people with your brand. And I think certainly my experience of working with businesses and destinations is to make sure you understand what you want and what that relationship should be. It's a professional relationship. As you both said, your business is in your own rights. So you will approach that professionally. A good blogger will also approach that relationship with a professional mindset, and it's really about agreeing, what your objectives are and how to align them. And I think hopefully we've got past the point where people think bloggers are free or they're just people we can use to tap into their audience without maybe much more thought than that, or even thinking about growth, but actually thinking about how that content really matches what that brand is. So at the very beginning, I spoke about the importance of having tone and voice, but I think it is also clearly not just tone of voice in your content that you create, but also the consistency between that and the people you work with as well, so they can be the storytellers on your behalf. So thank you very much to all of you for sharing your insights. Let's give them a round of applause. And you can connect with Wayla and her team anytime, and she will be around for the rest of ATM. And thank you very much for joining. I will leave you with that video again in case you're curious to come to Jersey.